Welcome back, learners! We've got more fun facts for you to enjoy. Rising above the rest of the city is the eye-catching Canterbury Cathedral.
Since the early 7th century, it has been the primary ecclesiastical centre of England, with the Archbishop of Canterbury being the primate of the Church of England. In 597 AD, the Pope sent St Augustine to Kent to convert its King Ethelbert and re-establish Christianity in England. The king was already familiar with the faith as he was married to Princess Bertha of Paris, who had founded St Martin's Church just outside the city walls, which is considered the oldest functioning church in the country and sometimes called the Mother Church of England.
The pagan Ethelbert was receptive to the message and was baptised within a year of Augustine's arrival. On his success, Augustine came to Canterbury, as it was a Roman town, and founded the original cathedral on the site of a previous church, as well as the monastery of Saints Peter and Paul, which was later renamed to St Augustine's Abbey. Augustine and Bertha are also responsible to a large extent for encouraging literacy in England. They apparently prompted Ethelbert to begin writing laws down and having them codified.
The cathedral has had a number of renovations and reconstructions over the centuries. In 1067, the Saxon building was all but destroyed by fire, but 3 years later William the Conqueror rebuilt and expanded it. In 1174, another fire led to the old Norman-style building being remade into the Gothic one we know today. Further expansions were built over the years, notably including the nave in the 14th century and the Bell Harry Tower in 1498. The cathedral was famously the location of a conflict between monarchy and church. King Henry II appointed his friend Thomas Beckett to Archbishop in 1162 with the intention of having control over him. Beckett resisted, however, not wishing the faith to be eroded in favour of the king's whims. In 1170, Beckett excommunicated a number of bishops loyal to the king. Henry was outraged and in a moment of anger yelled, "Who will rid me of this turbulent priest?" 4 of his loyal knights overheard the outburst and took it as a call to arms. They travelled from Normandy to Canterbury, intending to capture Beckett, but when he resisted they killed him on the spot.
King Henry was distraught at the news, and in penance he starved himself for 3 days. Becket was a martyr, a shrine was made to him, and a pilgrimage to the cathedral increased as many wished to pray to him. Becket was sainted in 1173 after reports of miracles in his name. On the 12th of July 1174, Henry gave a public penance here.
He walked barefoot for 3 miles from Harbledown through the West Gate to the cathedral and bowed at the shrine, where he openly confessed his sins and allowed every bishop present to give him 5 strikes from a rod before each of the 80 monks would give him 3. Catering for pilgrims became big business in Canterbury following the events. The Hospital of St Thomas the Martyr, named for Becket, was established in the late 1100s to house pilgrims visiting the city. It was also used as a schoolhouse for a period, and Christopher Marlowe studied here as a young student.
Pilgrimage was the main feature of Geoffrey Chaucer's masterpiece, The Canterbury Tales.
Chequer of the Hope on Mercery Lane is on the location of the pilgrim hostel he mentioned stood previously.
There's no explicit confirmation that Chaucer ever visited Canterbury, but it is quite likely considering he was a royal messenger from London to Europe and an ambassador.
As a prominent member of the Duke of Lancaster's household, it can be safely assumed that he attended the funeral of his brother, the Black Prince, in 1376, whose tomb is in the cathedral. During Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries, in which he disbanded Catholic places of worship and appropriated their property beginning in 1536, Canterbury lost its priory, nunnery and 3 friaries, as well as St Augustine's Abbey. Thomas Becket's shrine was dismantled and the jewels were moved to the Tower of London. Celebrations in Becket's name came to an end, and so pilgrimage died down with them. Despite the cathedral's troubled history with royal Henrys, in 1413 Henry IV became the only king to be buried there.
More recently, the hugely popular Harry Potter films intended to shoot many interior scenes of Hogwarts at the cathedral, but permission was refused as they did not want to be associated with witchcraft and wizardry.
The well-known butter market outside the cathedral was originally called the Bull Stake. Here, bulls were tied to stakes and baited by dogs because people believed it would produce better meat. As late as the 19th century, some were kept for bull running events. Nearby Butchery Lane, which used to literally be a lane full of butcher shops, commemorates this.
Just because you've seen the cathedral doesn't mean you're through visiting Canterbury's many historic religious sites. We've mentioned St Martin's Church, the oldest functioning church in the English-speaking world. On its grounds can be found the grave of Mary Tortel, who we mentioned earlier, and the remnants of a Roman tomb. Nearby, St Augustine's became the site of a prison.
In 1808, Her Majesty's Prison, Canterbury, was built to replace the previous one located at St Dunstan's by the West Gate. The prisoners were marched from one to the other in chains, but one of them, 17-year-old John Betts, managed to slip loose and escape during the transfer. Also built in 1808, Sessions House was another jail situated by the courthouse. The two prisons were connected by an underground tunnel. They housed male and female inmates, and some offenders were put into a hard labour workhouse, where they were made to toil for long hours with little regard for health and safety. In 1886, William Scamp had to have his hand amputated after getting caught in some machinery.
During the Victorian era, most of the male inmates were locked up for things like petty theft, public drunkenness, carrying tobacco, and homosexual acts, while most of the female prisoners were prostitutes. In July 1895, a builder named William Hancock Philpott was locked up here for 1 month after stealing 3 ducks from Charles Terry, who was the superintendent of Canterbury sewage works.
The warden between 1860 and 1880 was Joseph Grigg, one of the survivors of the charge of the Light Brigade. He once described the sight of casualties after a bloody battle as higgledy-piggledy. More recent high-profile inmates include Salman Butt in 2011, the Pakistani cricket captain who accepted bribes to fix matches, and the Cray twins, the notorious London gangsters.
HMP Canterbury was closed in 2013, when an inspection found it overcrowded and in poor condition. Sessions House is now part of Christchurch University.
That rounds off part 2 of our Cantorian tour. Join us for the third and final part in the next video.
Hello, Cat of Canterbury. You're very cute.